Welcome back to the show, Wave On, and I'm excited for today's episode. We're diving into something really special about yoga, entrepreneurship, and making movement accessible for every generation. My guest, Lindsay Madison, specializes in just that with her brand, Visions Incorporated. Check her out on Instagram, and let's dive into this episode. Lindsay, thanks for being here on the podcast. I welcome you, and you go ahead and if you want to kick it off and share your social media and a little bit about you. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. So, my social media, you can find me mostly on Instagram at Visions Incorporated. That's Visions with an S, Incorporated, all spelled out. And I believe that we are better as a collective when we bring all of our visions together. So that's really the beginning of my company. Where it all started was this idea that collaboration and community made us better as a collective. So that's what I really try to do with my yoga and all of the movement that you will see on there.
That's awesome. I think it's it's so important. Well, it always has been important, especially if you're leading it and you've decided to do this on your own. I mean, same for me as well with what I do, but probably even more so important to keep sharing a positive message and, besides physical wellness, mental health, wellness. I mean, what are your thoughts? I guess right now, maybe it's a little bit of behind the scenes with the teacher notes. Sometimes I say that just because, the students come to you and our clients and, as us teachers, we get to kind of collaborate in a different way.
Yeah. So I was brought to the yoga mat because of a serious illness. I actually lost the hearing in my left ear when I was 23. It's like a weird sinus infection, sort of a 1 in a million type of thing. Personally, I would have preferred to win the lottery, but here's where we're at. And I at the time was working in what people might know as like a cubicle farm. I was in corporate America, and I would be walking down the hallways and like bumping into these little flimsy walls of people's offices, right? And so a friend of mine recommended yoga as a way to help me regain my balance. And I went into my first yoga class. And while the physical practice definitely has helped my balance now, almost 2 decades later, not quite, but almost. Not trying to age myself too much here, but what I found even more astonishing, it's like they say the teacher appears when the student is ready. I, for the first time, felt like all those noises in my head were able to like be quiet for a second, and my yoga practice helped me find that calm and that stillness within. It was so wonderful. So even though the physical was incredibly helpful, I kept coming back to my mat because of the benefits in my mental health that I was noticing.
Nice. And
Yeah.
so you started with like a personal practice and eventually grew into, I'm sure, probably certifications, enhancing your practice, but to be able to lead others.
Yeah, yeah. So, I can take you through kind of my journey if that's okay, because
Yeah,
it's kind of
for
it's been a winding road, right? So I was introduced to yoga, as I said, through my own health stuff, and loved it, wanted to do it all the time. Was like, why am I working in corporate America when I want to be doing this? And I was actually able to start a network marketing business to supplement my corporate income. So I left corporate and was working for myself and got my yoga teacher certification. Kind of more so like maybe one day I would teach, but I really wanted it to deepen my own practice, as they say. And then as I was completing my teacher training, my uncle, my mom's brother, was diagnosed with lung cancer. And he actually passed away relatively quickly within about 6 weeks of his first diagnosis. And that made me realize that I missed my family. I was living in Chicago at the time. My family was mostly in Michigan. I wanted to be closer to them. So after his passing, I started coming back more often, eventually moved back to Michigan in January of 2014. And then in June of that year, my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. So it sucked but I was so happy that I was here, and able to be with her through that. And as she's doing good now. I gotta make sure to mention that so
Good.
nobody's worried. My mom is doing good now, but she did have to have one of her lungs removed. I wanted to be able to take what I knew from teaching yoga to help her. Right. And so we started working together literally from her hospital bed. She'll tell stories about how I had her lifting like cans of tuna or whatever we could find to build strength and
Yeah.
coordinating that with the breath. And so that's really where my love of working with differently abled populations, began. And over the last 10 years, I've worked with other cancer patients, other folks who are differently abled due to mental or physical impairments. And now my focus is on senior citizens. So I work a lot with seniors either in their home or in independent living facilities teaching chair yoga. And then I've created a whole virtual yoga studio. So people who maybe don't have any physical limitations in terms of their practice, but can't get out of the house because they are a caretaker or they're a mom or, for maybe they live far away, but they still want to do yoga with me. So trying to make yoga more accessible to as many people as I can.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. That's quite the story with yeah, and I like how it started with you and then to grow it to be in the certification training mode, but to deepen your own practice, but then you discover so much more out of it and then have this like journey, this path, and it's kind of where you're at today. That's really nice. Do you find yourself, especially with chair yoga, I guess, do you do like meditation with them just a little bit, like with the breathing? I mean, especially talking about lungs, and I even have some family with it just seemed like just not well strong lungs, and so even for me a little bit of that because of the breath, and then it becomes a little bit about the mental thing and then the physical. Can you share like just your experiences and what maybe helps people, maybe even something within the podcast, anyone that's listening too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think we talk about it enough, but senior citizens and geriatric individuals, they have a lot of the same issues that all of us have, right? There's anxiety and fear. There's a lot of grief in that community. And so pranayama or breathing practices can be so beneficial. And then when you're talking about folks who might be in a wheelchair or a walker, learning how to breathe is so important, learning how to take those active breaths. So what I encourage my students to do, and so if you're listening to this podcast and you want to do this yourself, is just start by noticing, how you're sitting. Are your legs crossed? If they are, maybe uncross them. Place the feet on the ground and notice your breath, right? Take a breath in and out without trying to change anything, just observing. And I can see you doing that
Hmm.
yourself, right? So we just start to observe our breath. And then as we're able, we might take an extra sip of air on that inhale. Try to hold the lungs full. Think about them like a balloon inflating, right? And then as we exhale, we're going to push that air out. Imagine that balloon deflating completely. So you want to finish one breath before you begin the next. And so often I will just start my practices like that. And then I let my students know that if all you do today is show up and take these deep breaths with me, you are doing yoga. I think we in our minds might think that yoga only exists when we're doing a handstand or the most challenging posture, right? But the word yoga means union. So when we bring our mind and our breath together, we've found that union. And then I also let my students know that it's okay if they fall asleep, right? That deepening breath is very restorative, and they would not be the first student who had fallen asleep on me, and they probably won't be the last student who'd fallen asleep on me,
Yeah,
And
for
so I
sure.
take that as a compliment. If you're
Yeah.
relaxed enough to fall asleep, and I'm doing my job.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome. No, that's so
Yeah.
good. I love that message. And it's funny because we were talking about breath, yet we do it how many times in just one year.
Mhm.
But when you make it intentional, or when you like you're describing using this visual, closing your eyes and like just in the beginning, right? Just observe what breath you arrived with. And yet there's so much power behind it. And
Mhm.
it's like we just move constantly through the day, like just forcing stuff. And I find a metaphor behind it. It's like what you're saying, forcing, not just forcing, but a challenging pose in yoga.
Mhm.
It's this challenging thing in life. It could be maybe just a work task, even, and it's like if you just take 5 to 10 minutes to sit back and just focus on breath. And sure, that thing probably didn't go away that was challenging, right? But you kind of use that breath to help you calm the mind, your internal organs, your blood pressure, maybe even.
Mhm.
It's amazing. Have you read many books about breath, or I mean, anything you'd share that you like as a tool to help
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. I honestly, a lot of the breath work that I do is inspired by working with my mom. I can't think of the name of it right now. Any of your nurse listeners will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's like this little tool you get in the hospital and they make you blow into it to like
I
lift
know
the
what you
ball.
mean.
So that was like our number one thing, right? When we were recovering, working with my mom with her recovery. So I like visuals a lot, tools like that where you can see the power of the breath. I'll often refer to that tool in my chair yoga classes because unfortunately a lot of my senior citizens have seen that thing. They know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Or the image of the balloon, that sort of thing can be really powerful. I have read, I mean, tons of books over the years in terms of meditation and yoga postures and breath work and all that kind of stuff. I've done several different teacher trainings, but one of the best books I have ever read, I come back to it time and time again. So if somebody's looking for a book, this isn't necessarily like a how to book where you're going to say, okay, this is how to do this pose, this is how to do this pose. But the author is Darren Main, and I believe the title is Yoga and the Path of the Urban Mystic. So it is about how to be a yogi, right? Sort of spiritual or someone looking for enlightenment in some way, right? You're looking for something deeper in life, how to be that sort of person in a modern world. Because most of us are not sitting like on a meditation cushion chanting Om for hours a day. So how can we take, our 45-minute or hour-long yoga practice and apply it to a modern life? So I would say, if you're looking for something, start with that. Also, I will be coming out with a book this year. Check that out if they're
That's
interested.
cool.
The end of 2025, I'll be coming out with my book tentatively titled Yoga with Grandma. So there will be some stories in there about my years of teaching with the population I mentioned, and then different poses that you can do. So if you have someone you love that you want to do some chair yoga with, you can use some of those practices. And there's a whole chapter on pranayama breathings.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Oh my gosh.
Thanks for letting me walk right into that plug.
It's great. I mean, hey, it's sharing good stuff and positive. So, yeah, maybe a follow-up podcast sometime in
Yeah.
the near future. That would be
That,
awesome.
the thing was, is people, my students had asked me for years now to write something down. Can you write something down for us to do when you're not here? And i- there's so much that goes into what I want to share with them. Rather than just like writing on a notepad or something like that, I was like, let me take the time and actually write down what I am trying to impart with these folks. So
Yeah.
there we go.
That's great. Do you have like a path, like a kind of I guess maybe a planned out path for the book coming up? I'm kind of going off into another tangent sort of with
Yeah,
book writing because
that's
I'm
okay.
interested in that. And but it's things that I've read is very tedious or very, robust on trying to get a book out, and like you
Yeah.
hear about people with movies even and how they go about doing that whole like launch party, and then like even several years after still promoting it and getting it out to the world.
Yeah. So I am very fortunate that know the owner of an incredible space called the Detroit Writing Room. So this is it's a virtual community. If you're listening not in Detroit, you can still be a part of it. The Detroit Writing Room, and then they also have an outshoot of it's called the New York Writing Room. And so last year, I attended a workshop through them called How to Get Your Story Published or How to Get Your Book Published, something like that. Yeah. And so it was a great workshop where they literally laid out, okay, here's how you self-publish, here's how you can get a book deal, and then here's sort of a hybrid where you can partner with a publisher but still own the rights to your intellectual property. So that's the way that I'm going. Other people might make different decisions, but I took the last year to what I call downdraft. So just get all of the things out of my head and down onto the paper. I've submitted that to the publisher and gotten some notes back. And then now I'm really excited. Later this month, I'll be doing a photo shoot with my grandma because we're going
Oh,
to have some photos of the different postures
very
in the
cool.
book. So we'll be doing a photo shoot, and then I'm sure another round or two of edits and all of that fun stuff. And then it takes about 6 to 8 months for it to get out into the world. So once it's handed off over to the publisher, they'll do all of their fancy publishing things. And so my hope is that it will be ready to go around the holidays. So maybe we can do a little holiday
Oh, that'd be cool.
circle back, and you can hold me accountable to make sure it's out in the world.
I'll be like, come on now, where's the book?
Exactly. I'll be like,
You're like, I swear it's on its way. It's here. That would be awesome. I'm gonna keep that thought for sure. Yeah, grandma sounds pretty fun. I mean, as far as doing
she is such an inspiration. For her 90th birthday, we took her up in a hot air balloon. That was her 90th. That's what she wanted to do for her 90th
wow,
birthday.
awesome.
And so everybody was asking her, well, if you're going to, do a hot air balloon, what would you do next? And so she said, well, I'll go skydiving. So for her 95th birthday, we went skydiving, huh?
Okay, wait a minute.
And yeah, I know.
Wait a minute. Let me process this for just a second. You're saying from a plane, not the iFly tube indoors.
No,
Okay.
no, we literally went up in a plane, and it was so funny because I have never been interested in skydiving. Like that's not something uh, it didn't even make it to my bucket list to be checked off, right? No, I'm not interested. I have a terrible fear of heights. I don't even like to fly in a plane when I'm gonna go up and then land normally. But grandma said she wanted to do it, and I thought, well, I can't not go skydiving with my grandma. What a story, right?
Right.
So off we went. We went to there's a little place in Tecumseh, Michigan, and it was great. If anybody needs a skydiving place, I definitely would recommend them. They were phenomenal and super helpful in her getting up into the plane and all that good stuff. But I tell you, when you see your grandma go jumping out of an airplane, you're gonna follow her. You're not just gonna let grandma just go, right? I got to go see where she went.
Oh, that's too funny. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just funny, I just kind of visualize all these things like I mean, you're talking about this book and then I'm sure this is kind of like this great prelude behind the scenes already and I can't imagine what else you might have learned from her along the way, not just something epic like that.
Oh, yeah. No, my grandma I tell her all the time, she's my best friend. She'll be 99 in July, if you can believe
Wow.
that.
Amazing.
She has lived an absolutely incredible life. And I'm so honored that I get to be with her in this part of it. And that's really how I feel about my students as well, whether they're in their 90s or in their 40s. I have folks who work with me in all different age brackets, but it's such an honor as a teacher to be given that gift to guide somebody through a yoga practice, to hold space. I've had people show up after loved ones have passed away, or God, talk about the collective stress that we were all under a few years ago during the pandemic, and to be able to create, even if it's just for 20 minutes or a half hour, that space where people can feel inspired or feel consoled or whatever they need is such, I don't take that lightly.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. That's really special. It's a really cool story. And I know you were saying something about you're going to do something fun with her today. And it's kind of like a special day around here anyway.
So my grandma is very Catholic. I am not. I'm actually Jewish, but we support her in her faith and, all of that. She was the secretary for many, many years to the chancellor for Orchard Lake Schools, which is a very fancy Catholic Polish school in Orchard Lake, Michigan. So she's very connected with priests. And I mean, like, it's so funny. So today is Fat Tuesday, day before Ash Wednesday. And so we will be going to the Polish Roman Catholic Union Hall, where they're having a Fat Tuesday party because grandma has to see her favorite priest. And we got to listen to the Polka Jammer Network and get our traditional Polish meal and a punchki and all of the fun things that we got to do.
That's awesome. I know we've definitely have like the ties around here in the Detroit area for the Polish network and communities surrounding definitely amongst other things too, but
Yeah. You know what's so interesting? When I went to Poland with my grandma about 20 years ago, and I learned on that trip that Detroit is actually on the same, I want to say, is it latitude that goes across as Warsaw? Our climate is very similar to Poland. And so a lot of Polish people feel comfortable in the Midwest because it reminds them of home.
oh,
Yeah. Isn't
learning
that
some more
interesting?
things. Yeah, it is. I
Yeah.
haven't heard anybody say it like that before.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then it's also my boyfriend and I love to watch Trisha Yearwood's cooking show. And Nashville is on the same latitude as, say, like Okinawa or something like that. So Japanese people love to cook with okra, which is like, we don't ever think of it like
Right.
that, but it's a very common crop. That's what Trisha Yearwood said, at least. I haven't verified that independently, but
Hey, it's all good. Admire your story. I mean, not just, about yoga, but especially with your grandma. That's so great. I mean, not everybody gets to have that, So it's very admirable.
thank you. And I get that, that not everybody gets this gift. And so I feel like it's sort of an obligation to share her with the world, because she is so wonderful. So if you are on Instagram, you can look up the hashtag grandma turkey dinner. My friend Dustin gave her that nickname forever ago. So there's lots of good photos and videos of grandma turkey dinner floating out there on the interweb.
Grandma turkey dinner. Okay.
Uh-huh. And it's literally just as simple as she made him a turkey dinner. And so she has been grandma turkey dinner from that point on.
Sure. That's cool. That's
Nothing too crazy with that story.
that's so fun though. So I mean, like what else do you guys kind of do together or for fun?
Yeah. So, I mean, as a 98.5-year-old, there's not a ton that she can really physically do, but we do, chair yoga together when she's feeling really like she's got to get her workout in, but the weather is maybe not so great. She'll do laps around the house. We have kind of like a circular setup where you can walk from the dining room to the kitchen back through the entryway type of thing. So
Yeah.
she'll do circles like that. We do go for walks outside. Almost every Saturday, I take her to mass. We look for different events that, she's interested in. She's a member of the Polish Roman, wait, let me try and get this. West Side Detroit Polish Roman Catholic Union Historical Society, I think is the name of it. But
Okay.
so they do events. And then she's actually really fortunate that her little sister is still with us as well.
Okay.
So as often as we can, I try to get together with my cousin Bridget and get the two sisters together. And it's like, I mean, you can just see them at 16, like laughing and making fun of us, having the best time. So
Very cool.
yeah. So, and also I'll say, the fact that I'm able to teach virtually makes things really helpful. So If you're like, oh, I love this girl, I want to support her, join my virtual yoga studio because I have a yoga studio set up in my home where I can teach from, but I'm upstairs for my grandma. So if something happens, I can be right there. She doesn't get worried that I'm leaving the house, all of those kinds of things. So that's been a really big blessing in our lives is that I
Yeah.
don't have to leave her too often. And we can just kind of hang out, watch Law and Order, do fun stuff like
That's awesome. It sounds like yeah, you have like this really cool roommate. Just
who tells me like crazy stories from 1944.
I can't imagine. It would be so wild.
So her son, who's my oldest uncle, is 77 and he actually moved in with us in September. So I've got the two of them living with me and my
Oh,
boyfriend. And so
wow.
a lot of times like, they'll kind of, hang out or they'll tell stories about growing up and it's just really to me this is the way that families used to be.
That's what
And
I was just gonna say.
I
This sounds
yeah.
like what other cultures or how people used to be. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So they'll be helping me. We're going to get a little family kitchen garden going in the backyard. And I already told them they'll be helping me weed it and, doing what they can. But yeah, it's
You still
kind of
get a little bit of a chore, even no matter what your age.
this is the thing. My grandma will get mad if I don't tell her to do something. Like I've told her, Grandma, you should be on a lily pad, like eating ice cream and bonbons all day. I'm happy to serve her. But that gets old after a while, We don't I mean, think about it. If somebody was just doing everything for you, you'd get irritated after a bit. I'm fortunate my hairdresser actually took care of her grandma. So we were talking about it a while ago and she said, "I always had a basket of socks for grandma to put together, like a basket of clean
Oh.
socks from the laundry that grandma could put together." So I've started doing that. And then grandma folds the towels. So whenever I do a wash of towels, she can fold that. So finding little things around the house that she can do that still help her feel like a contributing, member. My Uncle Jerry unloads the dishwasher every day. There are little things around the house that make a big difference to them and they're helpful for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good message too, just simple things like that that may be obvious, but one thing I've been learning lately is to state the obvious just because
Mhm.
it can be overlooked.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, people ask my grandma the secret to her longevity. And she will always say, you got to use it or lose it. So you got to keep moving. When she was in the independent living facility during COVID, she would walk around her apartment. Once they let them out of the apartment, she would walk around the building. She went to all the exercise classes. She's not, I mean, she's never a bodybuilder,
Sure.
but
Sure.
she would do what she could with what she had.
Yeah. That's good. That's because I mean she must have aches and pains. I mean
Oh yeah.
it's going to
Yeah.
happen. And
Yeah.
yet, yeah, she's focused to stay moving to what she can
Mhm,
do, which is a
mhm,
big message too, to
mm.
keep trying.
Yeah, you got it. And I think that's, one of the things that she's imparted to me. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur. It's not easy to, be a creator and all of that, but it's so fulfilling and we can do hard things.
Yeah. That's a good podcast too, just in if
Good podcast.
okay, you know about it.
I was like, I don't know if she's gonna have to edit that out. Maybe we're gonna get like canceled for using somebody else's name, but we can do hard things, It's important and it's important to do them, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I don't know, sometimes you feel like if you look back at like your last 10 years and you're like, wow, that seemed really easy. Like how did I do all of that? How did I get through all of that? Because you might be faced with something really hard right now
Mhm.
and causes you to reflect. And I don't know the answer, but I think it's just you just plug along, you just breathe and just try, I guess.
And remember too that the person who got you through all that stuff is the person that you are, So when I was doing my teacher training, and I mentioned my uncle, he was literally passing away as I was doing my final practicum in my teacher training. And I remember being at the front of that studio and everybody knew what was going on, I had tears in my eyes. But the quote that I had chosen to start my class off with was, "You are in exactly the place you are meant to be at exactly the time you're meant to be there." I come back to that over and over again because there is so much that is outside of our control, right? And as a yogi, I have to learn to find the balance of what I can control, where I can maybe push myself, and where I just need to be where my feet are and just let the world do its thing around me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so true any day, really, but
Mhm,
what you choose to
mhm,
let come in, not to be blind by so much, but it's one of my things I started at the end or the start of the year was protect my peace. And that didn't even come as a resolution or anything like that. It was more or less like toward the end of the year, like around winter solstice, and thinking about just the reflection of the year. What would you want to come for the new year? And then that full, how many days we have and all of
mhm.
that, weeks we have. And it was just like protect my peace. Like yeah, it's so important. And what's funny, and I'm sure this might happen to you too. Once you think of something like that, then you start to see other things that reflect that in another way. If you write it down, if you say it out loud, that kind of thing, I always find that there's going to be something that trailers right behind that. And it might
Mhm.
be just a slight different message, but it's connected in this very strange way. I know that sounds very vague, but if I take, protect my peace, the next part is like about the positive message of just being genuine, like people, that kind of thing. And I think that then that leads to less drama,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, I think my rabbi shared on Friday, and I thought it was so important. I wrote it down. I'm like looking at it on my little board right here in front of me. She shared in her Friday night sermon, most people are good. And I thought, what an interesting, I mean, it kind of flips things on its head when we look for the best in people, right? When we make the best assumptions. That's not what a lot of folks do, myself included, right? We're like looking for things to be mad about or things that bother us or things to make complaints about. If you think most people are good, then that changes the way you approach people and the way you start conversations.
Sure.
So
Interesting.
I don't know. I'm gonna try to think of
What do you
that.
think of that? Well, if anything, you know what? I think it only helps your own being too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a two-way street, kind of like learning from your own students or clients, it's a
Mhm,
two-way street.
mhm.
Like I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. I'm guiding you with this information that I'm hearing from you kind of
Oh,
thing.
absolutely, absolutely. And then, that's one of the gifts of working with senior populations. I'm learning so much all the time.
I bet.
Yeah, yeah. No, oh my
Do,
goodness, the stories.
will they ask you like maybe a certain question on, well, how do I keep going? What about this limitation? What do I do? I mean, do you ever
Yeah.
feel stumped sometimes or just
If I do, I will research, right? Because that's one of the benefits of our weekly sessions. They know I'm coming back the next week. So if they ask me something that I don't know the answer to, I will say, let me go look into that or figure that out for you. And I also am very clear with them, like I'm not a doctor, right? I'm here to help you guys figure out what's going on so that you can communicate effectively to your caregivers and to your doctors. So, a lot of what we talk about is let's talk about the shoulder, for example, right? That's a common place that a lot of people get injuries on. So, we'll do stuff working the front of the shoulder and the bicep, the outside of the shoulder, more of like a lat, and then working the back of the shoulder and the tricep. So, we'll do three separate exercises, and I'll talk about how those exercises are connected to three separate parts of the same body or the same body part, right? Three
yeah.
separate sections. And telling them like you have to be your own best advocate. Do you feel that more in the front of the shoulder? Okay, now let's try this. Do you feel that now in the back of the shoulder? Do you feel how that's different? So my classes are very interactive,
Mhm.
right? I'm asking them questions, I'm pausing, I'm giving them an opportunity to ask questions of me. And so I get feedback that way. And then I also will have students come up to me after class and we'll talk. But, you were saying about stating the obvious. Sometimes it's as simple as that, right? Like reminding them to slow down or reminding them, hey, you spend a lot of time sitting. So standing up is going to feel very different.
Mhm.
And that's okay. Feeling different is okay, but let's learn what's different and then what's painful, right? Let's try to find those differences and avoid the pain and work on the discomfort.
Yeah. How often do you get to see them?
So most of my classes are once a week. And then I also have just started a virtual program to supplement. If any of my independent facilities would like to have a second class, they can, because many of these facilities have, like before me, they were doing just like the same chair yoga tape. Right. They would put on a tape in the workout room and whatever. So they have me live in person once a week. And then they can also buy into this class, which is a different class every week, but it's a virtual. So they can put that recording on, but it's not the same. That's the other thing. People get bored by if it's the same. I mean, think about, if you were to watch the same movie once a week, every week,
Yeah.
like you'd be like, okay, I know how this ends. Like, I'm not going to keep showing up. So I like to work with my students at least once a week. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd work with everybody every single day, but that's just, we don't live in a perfect world. So that is the benefit of the book. And then I'm hoping to do some teacher training later this year after the book comes out so that I can expand this program to other facilities because there's only so much time I have to throw around, but I want to make sure that as many people can benefit from this type of yoga as possible.
Yeah. That's that's interesting too because I guess I immediately started thinking when you said that about just teaching yoga in general, everybody ages and I know like some of the classes I do are like all levels. So then you have this range, right, of like someone that really wants to do a whole lot and then somebody else might not quite feeling it to do these challenging things.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, back to what your vision is for, giving this information, to people. I think it would be beneficial to yoga instructors just almost like a supplement, right? Like
Yeah.
just because you could share so much. I mean, just even from your grandma, and then you have these other individuals that are close in age, proximity, and it would be a huge benefit, because we go through teacher training and like, yes, we do talk about the body and limitations and modifications, things like that. But honestly, we're all aging. We're all, going toward
Yeah.
the other side. And it's like, how do you really help more that are so much older than you, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you're talking about having a big range in classes, and I'm kind of chuckling to myself. So the first class I taught outside of my home studio. So I did my yoga teacher training in Chicago. And then, if you are a yoga teacher, after you do your training, you're just trying to teach, right? You're like, who wants me to come teach a class? I will come teach a class wherever you want me to teach a class. And so my grandma pulled some strings. And one of the very first classes I had was a community class at her church gymnasium. And she came and her sister. So I think they were in their 80s at the time, maybe like 84 and 80, something like that. So it was the two of them, a bunch of other people. And then my youngest student was my cousin Marky, who was 18 at the time and a professional gymnast, right? Like he could do 75 backflips across the floor. You know what I mean? So how do you teach a class where he's going to get something and the 80-year-olds aren't going to feel unsuccessful? Try to find that balance. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying it was perfect, but I teach a lot of maybes, right? Like I'll give lots of offerings. Hey, try this. If that feels okay, that. If that doesn't feel okay, back off. If you want more, here's a way that you can add on. So
Hmm.
I think as a teacher, I'm speaking to the teachers that might be listening here, look at your students and then just make sure you have a lot of options. Like you're like a waitress at a restaurant. You're giving them all their choices and then they can decide, what works for them, what might taste good.
Yeah, exactly. It's like many times I will say that I'm giving you the menu, the lay of the land.
Huh?
Choose appropriately.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you know what? I like that because it's a good challenge for me too to word all these things, wordsmith it or how you want
Mhm.
to lay it out. So yeah, it's another one of
Yeah.
those like two-way streets, right? Like you learn from you, you learn from me.
Absolutely. And, not I don't like, don't take yourself so seriously.
Hmm.
It's just yoga. It's not we're not I say, like, I'm not a brain surgeon up here. I'm just a pretty girl giving you some ideas of some things that might feel good, you
Yeah,
know?
right. Like if I was the brain surgeon,
Oh my goodness.
let me
Yeah,
tell you
exactly.
how much
Yeah.
money I'd
It'd
be
be
making.
as much as I make as a yoga teacher, I'll tell you that. No, I'm kidding.
It's pretty funny because yeah, that's a whole nother thing. It's
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's a whole nother topic,
Mhm. Mhm.
which I know you understand.
I do. I do. That goes back to the I'll teach anywhere. You don't even have to pay me. Just let me teach you yoga. I love it so much.
I know. I mean, real quick, talking about flashback to that, first yoga gig or class or whoever I brought you in to come and lead. And mine was like a Monday night at 5:30, maybe 5:45
Mhm.
start time. And it would just be this one guy every single time. One guy. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm like, this is what we're
Love your
doing.
consistency, bro.
I know. I'm
Love
like,
it.
this is where we're at. I'll be here if you're here.
Well, and that's the thing, I sometimes I'll have, especially towards the beginning, you'd have those classes where just one person would show up and then they would sometimes feel like, oh, like, is that okay? And I'm like, I am thrilled that I get to teach yoga right now. So thank you for showing up. So I don't just have to sit here and like twiddle my thumbs. Yes, one
Right.
person. And like go to those community classes. That is where you are going to get the best instruction because they are going to be trying so hard,
That's the truth.
they are going to teach to you. You're going to get just what you need.
They're almost as if they're taking the manual,
Uh-huh.
the training
Uh-huh.
manual verbatim.
Yeah. Also, don't be afraid to, if you go to a class, don't be afraid to give that teacher feedback. I love getting feedback from students,
True.
even if it's not good feedback, right? Like, hey, that thing you said didn't make sense, or this transition didn't feel good in my body, right? Like, because I don't know unless somebody tells me. I
Sure.
only know what I experience and what I can see. So, sharing that feedback, if you're comfortable, helps make yoga teachers better. So, I love to hear good, bad, indifferent, like, tell me all of it.
Yeah, I would agree too. Yeah, with that,
Mhm.
I mean, a- again, learning from somebody else. I mean, that's how you can offer something different or a tool or a block, a prop,
Mhm.
even, So, absolutely, sometimes you discover another like epiphany of some kind out
Mhm.
of that communication.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, and I had a friend say to me once years ago, "You can't connect the dots looking forward, right? You can only do that when you look back." You're like, "Oh, okay, that's why that, X, Y, and Z happened the way that it did." So, you really have to practice that yoga of just being in the moment, being aware of what's happening and making the best choice you can in that moment, and then maybe, when we reflect back, we can say, "Oh, that makes sense now."
Yeah.
But just try to stay present as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great message. I mean, overall, everything you've shared has been, enlightening and just, an over good, feel good story. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing all of that and honestly meeting you too, in person, which was probably about a year ago or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I'll have I'll share in the show notes your information, your website.
Yeah.
But do you want to share that again?
Yeah,
Anything to direct
absolutely.
people?
So folks, they can go to Visions Incorporated. So it's Visions with an S, Incorporated, all spelled out.com. That has info on my chair yoga classes. It'll have information on the book when it comes out. And then it also has information on my virtual yoga studio. There is a free week membership that you can take advantage of. So you get access to, I teach 5 classes live on Zoom every week. And then there's also over 100 on-demand recordings. And those are anywhere from like 20 minutes long to an hour long practices. So if you just have, a short bit of time, you can kind of fit them in to what works for you. So folks can connect with me through the website or on my Instagram. Honestly, I'm on Facebook, but like, don't talk to me there. I'm not on there too much. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
come find me on Instagram, shoot me an email, check out my website. You can find me on LinkedIn, probably. Uh, And yeah, I'm always happy to share what I know or offer some inspiration if I can, or a funny meme if I don't have anything inspirational going on that day.
A little bit of laughter is not a bad thing.
Exactly, exactly. And I have to say, I have loved getting a chance to look at your sweet pup on that surfboard behind you this
Oh,
whole time. And I'm like, I got to get myself out on the water with you.
yeah.
I got to do it this summer. So
Yeah.
if you don't see me, harass me. It'll be out of my comfort zone, but hey, that's what we're all about, right?
Yeah, we'll have to collaborate in that kind of way and see what we can come up with for sure. That'd
Oh
be
my
fun.
God, what if we get grandma on a surfboard?
What if she even just came out to like
I mean, she does like to swim.
really?
Yeah, that's yep. We anybody in the Detroit area, if you don't know, there's a great pool through Corewell Health slash Beaumont. You can get aquatic physical therapy, and the pool is heated to 92 degrees. It was
Wow.
the best thing. It was the best thing we ever did with her. She loved it so.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Where's that
The
at?
lake probably is not quite that warm, but yeah, it's in Royal Oak if you
Oh,
want to check
Royal
out the
Oak.
pool. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The water's not that warm, but you'd be surprised come July when you got the sun and yeah,
I mean, she would definitely come out just to watch me fall in the water. She would definitely do that.
it is a nice park, a nice area, so there that is accommodable for sure.
All right, cool. We'll figure it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the episode of Wave On. If you loved what you heard, check out my site for some great summer vibes, including our inflatable kayak and our revamped lip balm and lotion combo sets, perfect for your next adventure. Also, don't miss the early bird discount for our Big Bay retreat in July. It's going to be such an unforgettable experience. You can see that on the schedule page. Also, I invite you to follow along on social media or check out the site and sign up for the newsletter with all the promos, paddle dates, and classes. lunamoonsupyoga.com.